Welcome to our session on creative problem solving. In this session, we're going to be talking about the essential skills and things you need to know about solving problems in the workplace using creative thinking. The first part we need to talk about is what is not creativity. The first thing that we're trained in business school is to look at ourselves as being competitive in the workplace, as competing for the same attention from our bosses, from our colleagues, and from the people we work with. We do not want that in creative problem solving because when we are competing, we are fighting for resources and we are not working together. Secondly, we don't want to avoid problems, we want to tackle problems. So a lot of the times, because things are quite complex and they're difficult to manage, we will avoid an issue and we will put it to one side. We won't tackle it directly. That's also not creative thinking. That's the second big inhibitor of creative thinking, avoiding the problem. The third most common one is trying to resolve the problem. Now we might think that's a really good step, but when we resolve a problem, we are trying to get two people to give something up or to accommodate their positions in order to trade something off. And when we do that, we are accommodating not only what we want, but they are accommodating with us about what they want, and we compromise. And it's really lose-lose. So what we want in creativity is win-win. We want collaboration, we want people to work together, and we want a sense of purpose about what we're doing. And creative problem solving is all about working together to find new solutions to interesting problems. There are 4 essential steps to creative problem solving in the workplace. The first thing we need to do is to clearly define the problem. Now that seems almost the opposite of what I said in the previous session, because I was talking about it's very hard to know what the problem is in a difficult situation. But when creativity is involved, we are generating new solutions. We are trying to find the facts that we need in order to generate these solutions. So the first stage is generating as much information as we can through fact-finding. The second stage is to conceptualize that and define the problem through these facts. So what we often do, if we go back and we think about competition, is we compete. So we say, this is my territory, I might be in marketing, this is your territory, you're in accounting, and we fight with each other. What we want to do in creative problem solving is say, how can these ideas inform each other in such a way that we can develop them and work towards better ideas? So when we're finding ideas, what we're doing is we're generating opportunities to solve the problem. So we find fresh concepts and fresh ideas, and then we combine them together, and that gives us a nice rich picture of what the problem is all about. The third thing we do is once we've found these ideas and we've got all the facts around us, we conceptualize, define, and optimize our solutions. So in the last stage, we're really just trying to find what the cause of the problem is, what all the possible answers that are available through our creative thinking process. In this third stage, we are optimizing. We are trying to create the best solution we can by evaluating all the options we have available to us and trying to think about which one suits our situation best. Now remember, the first 2 stages are creative thinking. We are generating, finding facts, we are exploring, and there are no inhibitors or no judgments there. But in this third stage, we bring in the judgment then. So we avoid judgment previously because that will inhibit the creative process. And that'll stop us from generating good ideas. Lastly, and the most obvious step, is once we've decided what the best course of action is, given our environments and our respective positions, we make a judgment call and we make it work and we put it into action. We then begin the usual processes of evaluating that solution, putting it through metrics or performance goals, and we try and then make it work. In this next session, we're going to talk about the stages in a little bit more depth. We said in the last one that fact-finding and evaluation were key parts of the process, but let's expand that a little bit further. Einstein said that he would rather spend 95% of his time defining the problem and 5% solving it. Getting the definition right of any problem is important. That's why creativity is such an important skill in the workplace. Research has shown recently that when you have CEOs and people that are massive intellectual people that are involved in all kinds of projects, they are typically highly creative and conceptual people. We don't think of it that way because we think they're just sitting back in the easy chair, clocking a check, dishing out responsibilities to their underlings. But the truth of the matter is they're often highly conceptual and highly driven people, and they know how to build a team around them to make it work. Secondly, if you know how to define a problem, then you know how to invent solutions naturally. So the definition part is 95% of creative problem solving, but it really boils down to 3 different things. The first part of this is divergent. So you come to an issue and you think, we don't know what the solution is, so you diverge. And by that I mean you look at all of the possible options available to you, you assess them, you think about them, you don't discount any idea, no matter how dumb, stupid or backwards it may be, you go for it. The second stage is you then begin to sift through those ideas and apply them to the problem. So there's no judgment in that first stage. And as you converge, as you bring it down, and as you make them fit together, you reach consensus on what the best possible solution could be for the situation. By having no judgment in stage one, you get better solutions in stage two. What we often do in organisations is we go straight to convergence. We see, we've got a problem, there's no sales, and we just drill down, it's a financial problem. So for example, before we make judgment in the third step, we want to go as wide as we can, as broad as we can, then converge. So creativity first, conceptualisation first, convergence second, bring it down to the problem domain, and judgment third. There are several steps that you can take to ensure creativity during this process. The first is to think about out-of-the-box thinking. In out-of-the-box thinking, you're not looking at the problem from the perspective of being there. You are saying the solution is coming from outside the system. Most of the time, the solution is going to come from outside the system. Why? Because when you look at something for long enough, you get what they call situation blindness. You don't see that there's all these solutions you could generate because you just focus on your own domain knowledge, what you know, what you understand, your own processes, and how it all works. So this is a real complex issue. What we want to do is to think big picture, but we want to also think small picture at the same time. So we think big picture, we are part of an organisation. Small picture, we are a marketing entity or we are a supply chain entity. Our processes fit with the rest of the organisation. So when we get stuck, they get stuck. We often get caught up in our own little world without realising the consequences of that. We've got to spend a lot of time on fact finding. That's another thing you can do to ensure creativity. Go and find the facts, go and assess them, challenge the facts. And the most important part of that is always question your assumptions. Never sit there and say, you know what it is. Question and challenge them. Play the devil's advocate. Say if something's true, at the same time, what else could be false? And use that process to generate creative solutions. It's important because you can drive to the heart of the matter and find that most problems are simply assumptions. They're unfounded and they're not real. In another sense, we don't want to rush to what I call premature identification either. Trying to look at the problem from the angle of saying, let's just get the quickest known solution. Organisations that do that never genuinely solve their problems, and they generate a sickness from the inside out. They just keep solving problems using at-hand measures and trying to get it done as quickly and as efficiently as possible without reflecting on the bigger consequences of their initial actions. Everything's interconnected. That's the important thing to remember there. And one last thing is you can source questions that deliberately provoke people. You can provoke them, like an example is found in the literature of Sherlock Holmes. He deliberately asks questions that challenges people's points of view. He never settles for that. He tries to dissolve the problem and say, okay, if that's true, what also is true? What also is false? You can challenge people's assumptions on a regular basis. Now, people at work might think you're a bit of a wanker, but that's okay. We can work with that. What would you rather have? No friends or solve problems? I guess it doesn't have to be that way, but quite often that's the case. Questions to ask during creative problem solving include, how might we do this? How have we done it before? How can we do this differently? And my favourite question to ask during creative problem solving is, if you had a magic wand and can do whatever you want, what would you do right now? And if the conditions that are currently here weren't here, what would you do? If this wasn't a problem, for example, if your sales department is saying we don't have enough money, if we did have enough money, what would we do? This gets the mind out of the rut or out of the logic box of saying this is the only thing that we can do. And it stops us from getting stale during creative problem solving. What we also want to do is broaden the problem by expanding our definitions, adding new ideas in all the time. And we add in new ideas by challenging our assumptions. And lastly, deliberately engaging different definitions of the problem. An example of this could be if we are looking at building a dam in Brisbane, it flooded here and everybody said the dam was the problem. Perhaps it's the nature of the climate. Perhaps it's some kind of legal problem. Maybe the law got in the way when we built the dam. Maybe it's something to do with the way we designed the city. So you can't actually just hang on to one definition, but you can combine different definitions to ensure a rich process of creativity. Finally, it's important to remember three key things about creative problem solving. Engage different ideas to generate creativity. Don't just stick with what's worked before. And remember, like Einstein said, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, that's insanity. It's not going to work, is it? Dissolve problems. Seek questions that look at synthesizing problems and getting rid of those hidden assumptions and conditions. And lastly, challenge the box. Don't just accept what people say. Don't just hold their word for it, but challenge those assumptions. Question them deeply.